Welcome once again to the world of RGG, where you could smash a thug's face with a hammer and he'd walk it off, where your local weapons dealer would be willing to buy anime girl figurines off your hands for a high price, where you might be exploring a local abandoned building for fun only to run into a guy in a kinky gimp suit that's out for blood, where you might even encounter something out of this world. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Yakuza Supernatural Encounters, where we talk about the supernatural entities and curiosities that exist within the realm of the RGG games. Amidst all the fetch quests, all the scam quests, and anything in between, you will occasionally come across one or two happenings that take you out of that realm of what you'd come to expect, and you're suddenly thrown in a situation where you question everything you knew about this universe. After all, what good is a thrilling adventure if there is no mystery at all to it? For this session, we'll be going through a case that's in Yakuza 5 in particular, one sub-story that is assigned to Shun Akiyama that seems like it'll have a predictable ending, only for it to do a double twist. This sub-story, to my knowledge, is only accessible at nighttime and it can be found in Sotenbori. This is the story of the Prince Circle Ghost. Sotenbori, a vibrant district located in the Osaka prefecture in the world of RGG. One of the many things that the real-life inspiration, Dotenbori, is known for is the great food and the iconic river that always makes for a gorgeous backdrop. It also has its fair share of entertainment establishments, making it a hotspot for tourist activity that is both international and domestic in nature as well. This district just so happens to be one of the 5 available ones in Yakuza 5 that you can freely roam around in. It is assigned to both Haruka and Akiyama in the main story. The Prince Circle ghost story is closely linked with one of the many entertainment establishments that are in Sotenbori, the arcades. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's start this story from the very beginning. One of the many encounters that Akiyama can have with the denizens of Sotenbori happens to be with a couple of high school girls that are talking about going to the local arcades in search of an alleged ghost that haunts one of the Prince Circle machines. Supposedly, as you're posing for a picture, this ghost figure will photobomb your picture. And this is a tale they've heard about from fellow classmates in school. Now, just for a brief explanation, if you don't know what that is, a Prince Circle machine is an arcade attraction that a lot of you probably have even experienced at some point, where you pay money to be able to take photographs of yourself and with anyone that you may have with you. And you'd be able to apply filters and text, and then at the end of the session, you'll be able to print out these photos to keep them as mementos of your trip. In Yakuza 5, you're actually able to access this minigame even outside of the sub-story and take a bunch of goofy photos that you can keep with you. So anyway, these two girls say that they're gonna go check out this Prince Circle machine and see if there's any truth to that story, and off they go. You're able to go to the arcades right away after this, and you will actually see them in a Prince Circle booth, and you have to interact with their particular booth to advance the story. The two of them seem to be having fun posing and taking photos together, and then one of them claims that the ghost showed up, which startles her friend at first, but it's just her friend messing with her because of how her face might have looked like in one photo. They finish up with their session and they seem a little disappointed that nothing really happened. So it seems like there's nothing to this ghost story that they've heard about, so they up and leave. Akiyama thinks to himself that he figured it would turn out like this, but since he's here, he might as well give it a shot and take a photo souvenir. And so he poses for a photo and prints out that picture. And what do you know, there actually is somebody that photobombed the picture, and they seem to have a ghost face-like mask on, which immediately makes Akiyama think that this is a very obvious prank and that they're not even trying. Then we see that the man is still behind Akiyama, just kind of being creepy, which startles him a little bit. And then he starts to run away, which prompts Akiyama to give chase. Once the man has been caught, he apologizes for being a nuisance and is actually pretty quick to give you something to make up for it. He also says something interesting, which is that he felt like he's been through something like this before, which only confuses Akiyama, but he shrugs it off and says that there's no harm done and he doesn't even know why he gave chase to begin with. So, out of curiosity, he just asks the guy why he's doing what he's doing. And the guy basically just wants to add a bit of a thrill to people's experiences with the Prince Circle machines. He initially started just photobombing people, but then upgraded to wearing the ghost mask to do a better job at scaring people. He thinks this gives them their money's worth, whatever that means. Akiyama tells him that he really doesn't need to have the mask on even now, so he tells him to take it off already. And then we get a good look at his face, and as far as I know, the guy does have a unique face for an NPC. Akiyama tells him to take it easy from here and try to quit it with the pranks, which the guy says he will move on from that, and he bids Akiyama farewell and walks off. Thinking to himself after these chain of events, Akiyama says that he figured this would be all there is to that story. However, if Akiyama happens to pass by the arcades later, he will spot the same two girls from before near the arcades again. And as they're considering giving the Print Circle machine another try in hopes of maybe something coming out of the ghost story this time, Akiyama hears all of this and decides to interrupt them and tell them about what he'd experienced just now. As they're telling him more about the ghost, they show him a photograph from the machine by other people in which the so-called ghost does show up. Akiyama obviously recognizes the guy and points out that this must have been one of his earlier pranks since he doesn't have the mask yet. He tells the girls that he actually just finished chasing this guy around after he photobombed him and that he convinced him to stop doing what he's doing and just move on. But that's when the two girls look at Akiyama in silence, like there's something very wrong with what he just said. So of course he asks them what's wrong. And then one of them reveals that this guy actually died 3 years ago. So there's no way what Akiyama just said actually happened, is there? Of course, upon hearing this, Akiyama is visibly just as confused as the girls are. One of them then says that since he was always photobombing people in those machines, one time he just so happened to piss someone off so much that they chased him all around town, which ended up in the ghost mask guy running into the street during a red light and being run over. And it's after that that the stories of him haunting the Print Circle machines came to be. So one of the girls asks him again, what does he mean he just gave chase to this dead guy? Akiyama just looks to the ground with nothing to say. I mean, how is he going to not make himself sound crazy after all of that? It would be kind of difficult, especially when he himself doesn't know what he just experienced. By the way, it's worth pointing out, this girl in particular seems to be more spooked than her friend, because she just stays silent around here. So as Akiyama thinks to himself, the girl on the right breaks the tension and chuckles, and says that if this convoluted story was his way of trying to pick them up, it's not working. Which cheers her friend up and says that it was a fun story before they say their goodbyes and just leave. Akiyama's still standing there, bewildered, as he looks at them walking off and thinking back to his encounter with the ghost mask man. Was he chasing and talking to a lookalike? Someone that knows about the story and wants to further develop this ghost story into a bigger legend around Sotenbori? Or maybe it really was the ghost of the man who perished by severe consequences of his very own doing. And that was the story of the Print Circle Ghost, ladies and gentlemen. As far as ghost sub-stories go in the Yakuza games, I think this is a very solid one. I especially love how it ends with what we can safely assume is a definitive answer, and yet there is still very small room for doubt. I think we can all very easily just conclude that Akiyama really had an encounter with a ghost, right? And yet at the same time, even if the possibility is extremely slim, there's always a chance that it might have been a lookalike that wants to succeed the initial prankster who, sort of made a name for himself around the arcades. We don't get a 100% answer, and I love it just the way it is. There's a few things I actually want to talk about now that we've put the story outline behind us. Let's go back to the conversation between Akiyama and the ghost. We'll just refer to him as the ghost from now on to make things simpler. Almost right after you catch him, he says that he feels like he went through this before. So, get this. Would that mean he's kind of in a loop where after his death, he still keeps photobombing Print Circle machines and occasionally get chased? Or is he referring to before his death, maybe during that fateful chase that ended up with him dying? Or maybe he just means any time he was chased before the last chase in general, which, would remind him of the situation with Akiyama. I think the past memory theory might be the intended one here, but the time loop theory does have merit to it, and I think it's interesting enough to be considered at the very least. As for the mask itself, I did think about whether or not it has any significance, but I think we can safely say that there's not much to it besides it being the actual mask he used during his pranks. And because of its role in his pranks, I assume it just manifested itself with him, even when he's a ghost. Also, as an apology, he gives you a sacrifice stone, an accessory which fully revives you in combat if you die. Now maybe there's some room for symbolism here, and I don't want to read into this more than necessary, but I want to pull a literary device that might be relevant and just say that it might serve as a connotation here. A connotation is the meaning of a word beyond just its literal meaning. It can be used in a subjective manner or maybe even an objective manner. So for example, the word home for many people would imply a place of warmth, comfort, and affection. Now in our story with the sacrifice stone, sacrifice is obviously a word that is directly linked to ideas like death and all of the implications of that. And given that we're getting a reward from a ghost, it's only fitting that we get an item of that nature. Maybe you can use this as further evidence to the actual ghost theory, but it's up to you. One other thing to wonder is, why did the ghost not show himself to the girls, but he blatantly did so with Akiyama? Is there some kind of condition to be fulfilled? We know that it's not having to be alone because the girls show us a photograph of people they know, and it's two people in the picture alongside the ghost. Maybe we can just assume that the ghost shows up whenever he feels like it. One last thing that stood out to me. Once again, going back to right after Akiyama captures the ghost, Akiyama tells him that his prank was very harmless and that he himself doesn't understand why he gave chase. Now, call me an idiot, but I also feel like this was very intentional and there's more than meets the eye here. Did the ghost have some sort of hold over Akiyama to make him chase after him? What exactly happened here? I can't really say for sure, but I feel like Akiyama choosing to go after the ghost wasn't just a random choice that he made, and there had to have been some sort of supernatural intervention. I don't know about you, but Akiyama gives me the impression of a guy who always does things for a reason. So seeing him say what he said made me pause a bit. Just something to think about. For us to imagine a happy ending to this sub-story, it's normal to assume that maybe Akiyama's encounter might have helped the ghost move on for good and to stop photobombing people, right? Like, you know, putting a spirit to rest and all that. I'm sure you've seen it in a bunch of other horror media, but we still don't know for sure if that's what happened. Maybe, like I said before, the ghost is in a loop where he keeps doing this even after having people chase after him and constantly telling them he'll stop. Maybe before his death, this loop he's in after death is something he did with one or multiple people before meeting that final person that chased him to his death. Maybe at first he kept telling people he'd stop and he didn't. Or maybe that conversation with Akiyama truly is the first of its kind and he didn't have anything like that before. But then, why would he say he felt like he went through this before? This is such a simple sub-story, but the more you think about it, the more your head spins and you start to lose sight of the facts. Now, maybe there's also a bunch of Japanese folklore at play here that I'm just unfortunately not knowledgeable enough about. And if that's the case, please do tell me about stuff like that in the comments below. But I do think that's gonna be it for the story of the Prince Circle Ghost. Again, I think it's a very solid sub-story in general, but it's an even more solid ghost sub-story as far as those go. It's chilling, it might sort of take you out of the usual Yakuza feeling, which I always love that about the supernatural sub-stories. And as many of you know, compared to the quote-unquote normal sub-stories, supernatural sub-stories in general are a few and far between. That's why I always cherish these a lot. And thinking back on it, I think most of the supernatural encounters we did have happened to be with ghosts. So there's several of these to come in these videos, so please look forward to those. Now, what do you guys think of this sub-story? Is it a W as the cool kids say, or is it an L? Which theory do you believe? Go ahead and tell me all about it in the comments, and I also just want to say thank you so much for giving the channel and the video the time of your day. It really means a lot, and I hope to continue to enjoy more of these videos to come. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye now.